I'm Coach Action Jackson, and I'm coming at you with another exercise demo. This is the Goblet Squat on Tonal. So this is a fantastic beginner leg movement. It's probably the most programmed exercise on Tonal, to be honest. It's used in almost every program, every workout. Like if you're doing a workout or a program on Tonal, you're probably going to hit this exercise. It's so common. So let's talk about how to do it safely and how to do it most effectively. So what you want to do is you want the arm all the way down, one notch out. Doesn't really matter if it's in, out, doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter exactly where you stand. I'm standing kind of off to the side here because it's the best angle for the camera. But the key is as long as you're straddling the end of the arm. So you're straddling the arm, your feet are kind of, maybe the end of the arm is right in line with the end of your toes. And this cable is nice and vertical. As you stand up and hold the handle underneath your chin, as long as this cable's nice and vertical, you're in a good spot. So my feet are straddling the end of Tonal's arm. I have my hands wrapped around the handle. My thumbs are right over top. I'm gonna pull this handle in tight against my chest underneath my chin. Now it's in a really good position. Now let's get our lower body activated and in position to move. So the first thing I wanna do is I wanna make sure my feet are shoulder width apart, maybe even slightly wider, depending on your preferences. I like to be just outside shoulder width. My toes are slightly pointed out. That's going to put me in a nice, solid squat position. The other thing I want to make sure that I do is that I activate my glutes and my hamstrings. Now, the way I'm going to do that is by squeezing my glutes, number one, and you can just touch them and squeeze them, give them that little mind-muscle connection. And the other way I'm going to do that is by spreading the floor, splitting the floor with my feet. So what I'm doing is I'm pretending that I'm like spreading the floor with my feet and I'm driving my toes outward. You're going to feel that activate not only your calves, but also your hamstrings. And then as long as you're squeezing those glutes, the entire lower side of my body or the lower half of my body is now anchored into the floor, but it gives me a nice, solid, strong foundation. Slight bend in the knee, slight bend in the hips. We never want to lift or we never want to do resistance training with locked out joints. So you never want to stand with locked out knees. You want a slight bend in those knees. Good athletic stance. Think linebacker stance. So I have my nice athletic stance. Again, my toes are on either side of the end of Tonal's arms. My hands are wrapped around the handle. My thumbs are right over top. That gives me accessibility to the button so I can go back and forth nice and easily. So slight bend in the knees, slight bend in the hips. Have my handles wrapped around, or my hands wrapped around the handles, thumbs right over top. I pull this handle in nice and tight underneath my chin. My legs are activated. I'm spreading the floor. My glutes are squeezed. I'm going to take a nice deep breath in through my diaphragm. I'm going to turn the weight on. I'm going to let it load, fighting against that resistance. I'm going to push my hips back. I'm going to sit down in that imaginary chair, and I'm going to drive up. Push those hips back, sit down in the imaginary chair, drive up. And my cue to drive up is when my knees touch my thighs is a good level for me that's nice and deep. Do one more. Weight goes off. And I'm going to set this handle down. Now, a couple of things to think about in this exercise and a couple of common mistakes people make. So one common mistake people tend to make on this exercise is not having a nice, solid, strong foundational base. So what that means is that their feet are often too far together and they're not in a very strong position. So if your feet are too narrow and they're, let's say, right directly underneath your hips, it's going to be a lot harder to squat down. You're going to be a little more off balance and you're more likely to lose your balance. So I want you to make sure you get your feet nice and wide. So that should be slightly around shoulder width, maybe slightly wider. Another common mistake people make is not activating their lower body and really sort of actively squatting down. They sort of drop down, if you will. And we want to make sure that we're actively pulling ourselves down into the ground. So you're going to do that by feeling like you're spreading the floor with your feet. That's going to activate those hamstrings, squeezing your glutes, of course, as well. And this is going to activate your lower body, very much anchor it into the floor as well. So that's another common mistake people make. Now my lower body's nice and active and I can actively pull myself down into the floor. Another common mistake people make is leaning over too far forward. So as they squat down, they're leaning forward and they're getting out onto their toes. you want to make sure that you're pressing through your heels. You're pushing the floor away as you stand. So as I stand, I'm pressing that floor away. But the other thing is pressing through your heels, but gripping the floor with your toes. So press through your heels, but grip the floor through your toes. That's going to keep tension throughout the front side of your body as well. If you're so focused on being on your heels that your toes come off the ground, that's going to release tension through the front side of your body, and that can also create problems because that's something I used to do a long time ago, and that caused some issues with my back and some back problems that then I had to have fixed with my physical therapist. So press through the heels, but grip the floor with your toes. Another common mistake people tend to make on this exercise is dropping their hands down, getting lazy, dropping their hands down and holding this handle here. You want to make sure that handle stays nice up and tall and directly underneath your chin. Now that, of course, is going to involve a lot more biceps, a lot more forearms, a lot more grip strength and such, because you have to hold the handle here directly underneath your chin. So now what that means is we're getting a lot more core work. We're also getting some arm work as well. So it's upper body and lower body, making this really a full body exercise. That's one of the reasons why some people don't like this exercise as much, though, is because it does take a lot of upper body strength to do as well as lower body strength. So those are a couple common mistakes. So just to sort of summarize or refresh, make sure that you're straddling the end of Tonal's arms. Your toes are maybe in line with the ends. Feet nice and wide. Think shoulder width, maybe slightly wider. Toes slightly pointed out. You're going to have a slight bend in your knees, slight bend in your hips. Actively spread the floor. Squeeze those glutes to begin. Brace your abs. Inhale, exhale through the diaphragm, keeping things nice, locked and solid and tight here. That's going to protect your lower back. Wrap those hands around the handles, thumbs right over top. Hold this handle firm in place underneath your chin. Lock those elbows into your rib cage. And remember, actively pulling yourself down into the ground, sitting into that chair, pressing through the heels as you stand, pressing that floor away, and then also gripping the ground with your toes. Head's tall, chest is up, shoulders are back, breathing into the diaphragm. One more, and the weight is off. And yeah, it is a little bit difficult to turn that weight off at the end, especially if you have that weight cranked up. But hey, life is trade-offs. Hope this exercise demo helps. That is the Goblet Squat on Tonal. I'm Coach Jackson, and remember, action is the difference between dreaming and succeeding. I'm Jackson Bloore. Please like, share, and subscribe for more videos just like this one.